Yeah, hi Tim. Am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Yeah, hi.
Morning.
Good morning. So how are you? So tomorrow are you going to present some user stories?
Yeah, we have the ORAN team has two going into the buzzsaw.
Okay. Okay, yeah.
So we'll see how that works.
Yes.
It should be as so we're learning each time we doing that, right? You unfortunately you were the first one in, right? But we're learning each time. So I'm taking lessons learned and feeding that back to the ORAN group, right? It's like, guys, make sure you answer these questions. So, by the time
Yeah.
by next release, we should probably go, okay, now we know what everyone wants, really, right? So
Yeah,
go a lot
right.
further.
Yes. I think hope again we get a chance to uh, for the review of our user story. So that let's see how that goes.
Yeah, I'm only doing two, so I think you guys would probably cycle around and be three, I would assume, right? So
Mm-hmm.
if you're going to be representing,
Yeah.
and of course, when I say I mean the ORAN team.
Yeah, 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 of course, of course. Yeah. So yeah, let's wait for another 3 minutes. Yeah. Yeah, good morning to all.
Hey, good morning, Subhash.
Yeah. Hi. Hello everyone. So we are just waiting for 1 more minute so the other folk could join. So we'll just start in another 1 minute. Okay. So we have passed 3 minutes. So I'll open up the today's agenda. So yeah, recording is okay. Yeah. So today is the 1st of February, and we are here for discussing in the work group 5 around the service assurance. And let me share my screen. Okay. Could you please ensure me if my
Looks good.
okay. Okay, sure. So yeah, so as per plan, I have proposed these three agenda items. The first one, user story around impact analysis. So Bernard has added some implementation related details. The second one is service assurance loop user story. So that we have reviewed last time in the work group 3, and we got some feedback. So we'll go through it. And the last item, observability related update requirement and a discussion that will follow. So yeah, I'll start with the user story first. And yeah, feel free if any agenda item you would like to add. Okay. So I'll start with the first item here. So yeah, this is user story. We talk about impact analysis, where we try to correlate the high level intents with the low level artifacts or low level resources. So here we talked about some APIs, what we need to expose, so that the assurance loop sitting on the top could consume it, and he can work on his own assurance loop, and the service assurance work on the NF related assurance. Okay, so today let me check that Bernard is available. Okay, so Bernard is not here. So just I wanted to inform. Here. So just I would like to inform you that Bernard has added the implementation proposal. There's a two requirement he has brought up, and I'm not aware about its the detail. So I would request everyone just go through it, and if you feel any comments or any gaps or anything need to be added, please feel free to comment on it. Okay. I'm also actually not aware about it. So whenever the Bernard will be available, we'll try to go through it. Otherwise, I'll check with the Bernard. And if tomorrow in work group 3, if we get a time, I'll ask Bernard to take some feedbacks also on it. Okay, with this user story, I'll jump on the second item, the service assurance loop. Let me open it. Okay. So yeah, last time actually, when we reviewed this user story in the work group, we got feedback like still it is a very big. It seems this document seems like it is a vision. So we SIG one going to help us to again subdivide this particular user story into certain format so that we can consume it for the R3. So thing like if you were present in the last work group 3 review, or how do you think like it should be restructured? Maybe I'll take the opportunity to take comments from the Tal. Tal, do you last work group 3 meeting last work group 3 review, during the review, actually we got some reviews on this document. So any comments that you can share, so that will help us to again subdivide the user story in such a way that
Hey, your voice is going in and out. But I'll add my comment. Well, there were comments from Tim and myself about we probably need to flesh out the observability component more, and also the scaling story. You know, what exactly happens with scaling. Yeah, I think those two parts of the story need more depth. Yeah, that's it.
okay.
So Subhash, this is Tim. So just to
Yeah.
maybe to help a little bit, right? Because there was, so I think the general comment was, or there were two comments that I heard, right? Was this is a vision, a big framework that maybe we need to can't do, maybe we can't do all in release 3, particularly since we're relying on things that are being done in release. The other thing was that for those particular tasks that you have, those points that you have in your go down to your list where you have your steps. Oh, go up now. Those need to be broken down, you know, when you show them on your sequence, broken down further into maybe some additional tasks. That's what I took from the release 3 meeting. So I think it says, is this too big, right? Do we want to do observation as well as actuation, right? At the same time for release 3, and then even within one of these, if you take each of these steps, what are the individual tasks that need to accomplish? I need to create an SA controller. I need to whatever those things, right? I think that's what I took. I don't know if Tal, if you heard the same thing, but that's my takeaway from this use case.
Sorry, Tim, I just missed a few seconds. Actually, I got disconnected. Could you just repeat once again so that I'll take a note?
Yeah, so there was two things that I understood coming out of there. One was that when we looked at what you were presenting, the framework, it's a vision of where we want it to go, and that maybe not everything can be done, not use cases even, but everything within that vision may not be able to be done in release 3, particularly since we're relying on like an observability framework that isn't there to release 3. So we might want to look at, if I look at this use case, I might want to look at maybe only certain steps that are in that use case. You know, maybe I want to work on observability first, and we'll deal with actuation in release 4. The other piece is that when you look at this use case that you have here, when you say create NFPBS or create SACR, what are the things, what are the tasks? This gets into the tasking, because again, people I think are worried about, you know, can I afford to do this? What are the tasks in creating the SA that we have to do? We're going to define the SA, the CR, that's got, what are the aspects of that SACR that we've got to worry about, you know, the big areas that we're talking about. You may already have that documented, but I think they were saying I need some more details in each of these lines in terms of what tasks it takes to get this stuff done, right? So those were the two things. One is they think it might be too big for just a singular release, and it's more of a vision that would be more of a multi-release epic. And then two, within each one of these things, a little bit finer granularity. That's precisely what's going to go on or what needs to be done to accomplish that task. And I was just asking Tal if that was his recollection as well.
Yeah, I mean, I'm on the side of let's flesh it out as much as we can. I think we keep mentioning R3. Let's not mention R3, right? We don't know what will be R3, R4 yet. We're in an early stage. We don't know how to break this down to parts quite yet. I think once we have a complete vision of what we're trying to achieve, and we're all aligned and agree on it, then we can start breaking it down to stages of implementation and see what fits in R3. That's my
Actually, Tal, with that vision only, like I should able to complete the able to give entire use case. With that vision, I try to give the picture of the framework, and I assume that the observability, I assume that observability is going to provide me certain functionality. And I think many times we asked to Stephen also, like we need certain parameters from the NF. Maybe we can go down to the infra-related NFs. So I think that those could be collected, right? So if I let's say put like this, observability is going to complete this many tasks, and as part of service assurance, we are going to complete this smaller chunk of the work. So does it suffice for R3 criteria to go through the R3 criteria?
I don't know what part of observability will be in R3. So again, my comment is mentioning R3 is it's way too early, right? We're releasing R2 tomorrow. We don't know what's going to happen by the R3 timeline, right? Observability is still in the early stages, right? There's no code. So yeah, but however, we have some ideas of how we want to implement observability, and that's still a work in progress. So it's fine if this document will evolve, right? You know, we'll as we get more information about observability, we could refine this document more, right? So
Right.
yeah.
But at least for starting the implementation in the service assurance side, I was thinking, like we say that this is going to be the interface. We define it, and we'll start working on it. I think if the feature, I meant to say, just because that observability piece is not there, the service assurance piece should not stop, right? I was just thinking.
Yeah,
I was just like, yeah.
Right. I agree with that. I think this diagram is correct, right? But this diagram
Right.
is a very high level, right? So
Right.
we just have this bar called observability. But when we start diving deep a bit more later in the document, where we get into more detail, that's where we're not entirely sure, you know, about which we don't know how to break observability into components yet, right? There are a lot of different factors there, right? For different levels of data coming in and working with external systems. So that's still a work in progress. So I think there's going to be a lot of back and forth regarding that.
Right.
And we can document that part. We can say that this is in this document that this is a work in progress with observability. However, with scalability issues, I think we can dive deep already, because that's there's nothing blocking us from developing that more deeply.
Right.
Like this diagram is, I would say, woefully insufficient, right? It's not just about a replica set with more pods. We really have to think about specific network functions and how they scale. You know, if we're talking about 3.5GC or OAI, it would actually be different.
Right.
These are different products with different semantics. Yeah.
Actually, this idea I was just bringing just to means like before last week we had a discussion on HPE, that HPE is sufficient to manage the scaling of NF. So just to demonstrate that we can also work along with the HPA just by flushing those artifacts or those resources just by creating it here. But yeah, it will fulfill only the requirement for scaling in the terms where a single cluster, a context of single cluster is involved. So that exactly I mentioned it here. But in the second diagram, I replaced it with the one operator. So we can call it as a free 5GC operator, right? Because free 5GC operator, it has the NF deployment for deploying any UPF. And the actor pod again create a new modify those NF deployments, and also it could work along with the free 5GC. So that we can
I think
picturize it. Yeah.
But I think you want to. I think what Tal is talking about is saying you're saying those words, but you're not stating those, documenting those words.
Mm-hmm.
So if we're saying we're going to do case 2, which you have here, dealing with replicate sets and HPA, we're going to use that to when we on the UPF, right, to increase the pod or increase the capacity of the UPF. Then let's make that the use case, and then we show the specifics of what we're talking about. An operator could be the 35GC operator that's going to do that. It could be the whatever it is, right? And so I think, Paolo, I think, is that what you're talking about? Give me a realization of this template that you're using.
Right. I would say we need a plan to plan, right? We know what work is ahead. So I think we need to capture it in this document and say to be determined or something like that. And you know, realizing this is a living document. Yeah, I know we need approval for the user story, but it's fine to approve a user story that has TBDs, in my opinion.
Right. Right.
So you can practice this on
Mhm.
you can practice this on case 3, which is a very specific use case. We're going to use the observability framework for this, right? So we can go through this because here you should have the correct controllers in place and everything else that, like you have an actor pod. Well, you don't have an actor pod. What are we going to use that for? We're going to create a special operator for the NF, or we're going to use the NF operator. So I think you can start with, let's start at the easy one, right? That we already know what pieces are already there, right? Because we're taking the release 2 pieces, and work the problem with that and the steps and break them down. And maybe that will then show what you want to do for those other use cases. And if that's the case, then is that what you're asking for, Tal?
Yeah. That's it.
So let's do it with what we know, which is certainly with what we know, right? Because we're taking something in release 2, and we're just adding some functionality to existing components, right? At least for the problem domain. So if you look at this, if you want to start that, we can start down it. My first question is, you say there's an SA controller. Is this a general SA controller, or is it going to be an SA controller that's going to be specific to the RAM?
Is the question for me, Tim?
Yeah, because you're the one.
Yeah. So SA control is a generic, I would say it's a central point which is responsible to configure the entire closed loop. So it's a generic one.
Okay, so you're only going to have one SA controller defined, the code that's defined in Nepia, right?
Right.
Okay.
And the business logic.
Well, hang on.
Yeah.
Just one at a time, right? Don't go jumping around.
Yeah.
So this SA controller is generic, but what makes it so there's an SA CR to an ODU assurance, right? So what we can do is give an example of what that CR might look like.
Okay.
Right? Just an example. It doesn't have to be exact, just an example of how you're going to use this for a DU assurance. I think you guys already agreed with Sagar on the bandwidth piece, right? So you can use your bandwidth piece in here. Okay. So let's create, when we document this, let's create a CR example, right? And just note it as an example, right? Okay. Going into the generic SA controller, right? Part of that's going to be into get the ODU package resource. Okay. That should be an API that already exists. And then create an actor pod. Okay. So now we're talking about the thing that you wanted to talk about. What's this actor pod thingy?
Yeah. So the actor pod, actually, what I'm trying to say that it is the one separate Docker image available to us. So where we have the actual business logic. So for example, that will be the API is something like I would consume the data stream, and if certain correlation I will do on that data stream, and based on that I'll change the bandwidth of DU. So it will be having the context of the DU, like how to talk to the DU. If runtime parameter is provided, like a IP address, port number, I'm just giving a very simple example. Suppose it is exposed over the REST, then I need a IP address and the port number just to talk to the ODU. So if that is provided at the runtime, or in somehow my environment variables are initialized, the business so this actor pod will start communicating to the ODU. So
So
it has the business logic.
is this an operator?
Okay. In other cases, it could be an operator, but yeah, it's a simple pod currently. In this particular use case, it is a simple pod which consumes a data stream and applies on the action on DU.
How does the actor pod get placed into the appropriate cluster? The container.
Yeah, right. So whenever we create a service assurance CR, right? So that definitely need to be configured with ODU package, because here we'll get some context, and we'll check with the API server, means like which annotations are matching with this CR, and based on that, from that package, we'll get to know that in which workload cluster actually we need to deploy it, right? Because in the packages generally we have the information about the workload, right? Those annotation, those metadata we would be having.
Okay, so that's on 6, right? So what you're saying on 6 is, and you're going to have to break down 6 into some very specific things, right? Because now, you're talking about an actor pod, and your actor pod is a container, right? So it's a workload that's in a container on a pod. So you're going to have to figure out where that binary is stored as part of, right?
Yep. Yeah.
And where you see what I'm saying is when we're breaking it down, right? Break down 6 to very specific things, particularly, in Nepio, right? So then how does it get deployed down, right? To the workload cluster that the DU is in, right? You have to figure that out, right? And this is only done on on the CR creation, right? All this is done on the CR creation, right? So I think that's what we're getting into on 6. It says, give me the specifics of 6, right?
Okay.
For the type of actor pod. And then the other question I know that probably will be asked is, who's creating that actor pod container that's going to be downloaded on the cluster? Which organization? Is that an expectation of OEI to do, right? Or is that going to be something that someone's going to ask, who's doing that work, right?
Right.
Okay.
So, Tim, just a second. Would it be right if I say that it is another package that end user can specify? Do you think is it okay? Means actor pod can contain a business logic, something similar to the package how we fetch the package from the repository and finally we deploy the UPF instance. So something similar to that. The end user.
Your expectation is that there's got to be some entity that you're going to initiate this creation. I guess then you're saying, well, it knows what package it is. I'm like, oh, okay. Somewhere you're going to have to document those interactions where that's at, because that seems to be, I'm not quite sure exactly how an actor pod, obviously then the actor pod is in the management. It's not an actor pod, right? It's in the management plane. It's part of the deployment, right? So, or the management cluster. It's part of the deployment process. I decouple those two, but again, this is your use case, so it's probably need to decouple deployment from the actual business of the actor pod, right?
But the service assurance controller, so that would be responsible to configure the observability, placing the actor pod, and in between the relation between the NF observability and actor pod is actually, that is the closed loop, right? So this guy will SA controller will facilitate creation of that closed loop.
Yeah, so he's just
So
he's just telling the actor pod. I'm just saying, how'd the actor pod get down there?
yeah. So again, there are two possibilities. I'm thinking. But yeah, we need to choose which should be correct. Either end user should provide that if certain event happens about the bandwidth reconfiguration, then you use this particular pod. So that would be having the business logic to handle that scenario. Otherwise, in the ASIC service assurance controller, we need to explore the default option, how exactly we can handle it. So there's two possibilities currently. I'm thinking, should we offload it to end user, or should we handle it as a controller? So yeah, two possibilities would be there. So I think we'll keep it open so that people can
Well, get
comment.
it documented because there's a question as to,
Yeah.
you know, one, what you're saying in this particular use case, your anticipation that the actor pod is nothing more than business code container, right?
Yeah.
It's not anything unusual about that, right? It's just code and container that gets deployed down in the same cluster as the DU
Mhm.
that it will control, right?
Right.
Okay. And so how that actor pod is down there, but the expectation of this use case is the pod exists, right? The pod
Sorry, Naveen,
exists. The pod had already pre-existed.
yeah.
The pod pre-existed prior to you starting this use case.
Yeah. Again, like I'll just reword in
Well,
this way.
it's important. You got to make a decision. In my view, you have to make this decision first, whether you're going to have the SA controller initiate the deployment or if you expect the end user. It's only because I think it's critical to the scope of the
Uh,
use case, right?
I see there are two possibilities, like ODU is deployed first, then we are configuring the service assurance on the ODU.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, we configure the service assurance CR. It will be keep waiting for those resources to be available in the cluster. Once that resources are created in the management cluster, then the service assurance will get deployed after it.
Yeah, but my point is this, right? Is that you're relying on an entity called an actor pod. I'm going to call it the DU controller, right? Okay.
Mhm.
So the DU controller, right? In this
Right.
case, the DU actuator, right? Is
Right.
going to is you can have a step zero, right, of this that says my intention as the end user is that I'm going to uh, do some service assurance on the
Mhm.
DU, right? And so he
Right.
can, in step zero, deploy the actor pod or the DU controller, right?
Okay.
Okay,
Okay.
step zero, and then run that out, whatever that means, right? So
Yeah. This
I would
point. Yeah.
I would make it the end user, right? I wouldn't put it on the SA controller to know that. Yeah.
Okay.
Maybe I'm wrong. Kyle might have a better idea, but I mean, I'm just trying to keep it simple.
Okay.
You know, in terms of responsibilities, because that way you're clear as to what's happening.
Right. Miss, I can assume that. Yeah.
Okay.
That is simple format.
So then this is just configuring the actor pod. So the CR has got then when I create this CR service controller, right?
Right.
I'm going to have to hydrate it with the for which DU and which DU controller / actor pod I'm going to
Right.
use in this as well as the metrics and the which observer you're going to use, right? So
Right. Right.
that's what I'm saying is the example of the CR would help, right?
Mhm.
Okay.
Actually, that we discussed also, like in CR, what four question we need to answer, what NF need to be
Is
observed.
that in this
Yeah.
document here?
Uh, no, not in this document. Yeah,
Okay.
it was
Well,
in a pre.
I
Yeah.
would put the items that you would want to
Yeah.
put in CR. You know, just
Okay.
in general, what you're going to keep track of, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
And you're not actually creating the actor pod. You're creating. Sorry, I can't read that figure.
Uh,
It's not creating the actor pod at that point. You're configuring the actor pod with the I don't know what it's configuring it with. So
I am trying to create actually the actor pod later. Like I'm aware about, let's say I'm aware about what image I need to create in the workload cluster. So the step number 6, I'm saying I need to create it.
so you
you're
are
there, right?
deploying. You are going to deploy an actor pod.
Yeah.
Okay, that's what I'm saying. So so you're
Yeah.
saying that the CR is responsible for deploying the actor pod.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, then you need to get very specific about how it finds that image and where that image
Yeah.
and the interaction it has with the Nepio, you know, because it's got to go through the hydration and everything else, right?
Mhm.
Okay.
The step number 6, you're saying?
Yeah. So you got an actor pod
going
that's
to the
got,
KPT packet. Yeah.
so you got an actor pod. It's going to have some IP address, right? It's going to have some connectivity to the
DU.
DU and connectivity to the SA controller, right?
SA controller connectivity, I think it doesn't need, because it only depends on the data stream that's coming from data lake or
Okay, so it's
observability.
got the data lake, right?
Yeah.
Connectivity then, okay, however
Yeah.
that works, right?
Yeah.
And so okay, so those are at least 2 different network connections that you're going to have to hydrate, right?
Yeah.
Into the pod. That's my point. I think that's the details of 6 that you got to get down to. And
Okay.
and
Okay.
who you where's that at that's going to get hydrated, right?
Okay. Yeah. So I think we are okay till step number 6, right?
No,
The
because
7th.
so again, step 1, you need to say what are the things that what's going to
Of course.
comprise
Yeah.
that CR, right?
Yeah.
And step 2
Yeah.
says you're going to get the ODU. Now, I don't know what's in why you're getting the ODU, this one. What's in the ODU you need?
In the package, I'll get to know which workload cluster I
Subhash,
need to select.
sorry to interfere. Can you make this picture a little bit big?
Actually, I'm facing some trouble, Varda. Like I'm trying to
Okay,
click
okay.
on this one. Even I
No
tried
issue.
Control Plus. Yeah, there's a
Okay,
problem.
okay. No problem. No problem. Go ahead.
If
So when you say
okay.
get the DU, what you probably want to know is what do you expect when you get the DU? What is it that you're going to need out of that for our purpose?
Yeah, I'll get the IP address of the ODU. It's like some context of the ODU that I'll get, and
Well,
even the
he's gonna
workload
he's gonna
information.
want to know what context you need because you're gonna expect the
Yeah.
API server to provide it. How's the API server gonna get it?
Yeah, here in the backend, actually, I did not write it. It will talk. Yeah, everything is an object, right? It's available here.
I get it. I just want to make sure the thing that you expect is
yeah.
what they're able to provide, right? That's why it's important to put what you expect there.
Yeah.
Right, because if there's not an API, because you're also making the call to the workload cluster, right? At that point.
Yeah.
This is the Cube API server on the workload cluster that the DU's on.
Yes.
Right? Okay.
Right. Okay.
And so find out.
Yeah,
I'll know that when you tell me those things that you want, and then make sure you say that this get is to the Cube API that's co-located with the DU, right? So you're making a call to the workload cluster for that, right?
Yeah.
And how are you going to get the credentials for that?
There's Wim. There you go.
Yeah.
I'll let Wim. He knows all that stuff.
Yeah, Wim. So
No, I was just asking a question. How are you going to get the credentials for that?
Actually, it is available in the management cluster, right? Means like we have used means like we initializes those workload cluster from the management.
There's only
cluster,
one.
Right?
There's only one entity today that had access to the workload cluster, which is a reverse thing, which is config.sim.
Okay, so
nobody
we
else
would not be having any context or kubeconfig somewhere to interact with the workload cluster?
Yeah, but you should not access it because it's insecure.
Okay. So yeah, this part actually we need to explore then, like how we can actually go to the
Can
workload
we?
cluster.
You want to move forward, right? I sorry I was late because I was in another meeting. I thought you want to start with use case 1, right? Should we not focus on the start rather than on the everything?
What we did, Wim, was we said, okay, let's go with use case 3, right? Which is the simplest because it's based upon what is actually there when you talk about the DU, right?
Why not use case 1? Why not use case 1?
We could. I was just doing it off of because we already know what we're doing with the use case.
What's use case 3?
That's the reconfigure of the NF, right? I
Yeah,
don't care which use case we start with, guys. I honestly don't.
Yeah, actually, it was the simplest one because Sagar is there to support on the audio side, and we were able to collect the PRP utilization, able to configure the bandwidth.
Yeah,
so
but even I mean, if you looked, I mean, I reviewed because actually Sagar has that use case in his use case document, which is not even targeted for R3.
Mm-hmm.
Because I reviewed it and I made that. So what you are now saying, that is not part of use case of release 3 for Sagar.
No, actually, Wim, what I attempted on this attempted in this document, we should able to create that framework, and framework should able to support this use case. So that's why I brought this use case. Like this can also be candidate for R3, where the service assurance framework help us for NF reconfiguration.
Yeah, but my point is this: as you see, there is so much stuff to flush out for your framework that that's why you're not moving forward, in my view. Because what you're trying to do, in my view, is trying to basically do Nefio, what we did in the last 3 years. You're trying to do now, right? So I think that's where the problems are coming from. So I always think, let's walk, crawl, and run, right? So let's start with the basics, okay? At the moment, and okay, so you need to say where you want to start. I was under the assumption we would start with case 1.
Actually, Miss, I would like community, our group, to take a decision, like which we feel we can achieve in R3. So I try to put out this use case, but yeah, as a community, we need to decide, right? So that will be much helpful.
Yeah. Okay. So
yeah. So what do you think we can achieve it? Like
my point is this, right? So first of all, you are talking about an actor pod, right?
I
question that we need it in a lot of cases. So for example, if you take use case number 1, right? So we have today HPA, we have, for example, CADA for, let's say, metrics that you can put in. So the reason why I'm bringing this up is this. We had a huge debate on health, okay? In the context of R2, we did a bunch of experiments, right? And the consequence of this is now I think we have a pretty good view on what we want to do in health. If you ask me, I think we have to do the same in this domain. So so my suggestion would be, you take use case 1, you look at all the elements that are there, right? You pull it together with what is available, and you identify the things that are not there that we will need in order to move forward, right? That's why I was thinking, let's start with the workload cluster, because if you start at the management cluster, there is a bunch of stuff that we do not have, right? One of the things that I was identifying is today we only have basically a one-way communication. We did a little bit of, so Stephen did a little bit on the topology controller, but we have to still review that because we need to identify who has access to what are the roles and permissions, and blah, 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 blah. So we basically have, at the moment, I would say, is a one-way street from the management cluster to the workload cluster. And in order to do full-blown service assurance, we need a two-way street. So we have to flush out how we are going to do it, what mechanisms we need to have in order to do that, and so on. So my suggestion would be, let's start at the workload cluster, right? And let's focus on that and try to identify things that we would need in the workload cluster that would help us move forward towards the, let's say, the big picture eventually, right? That would be my suggestion. Okay. And so as a result, I think how I was looking at it is, I took your use case 1 and you say, okay, we need an actor pod to control the HPA. And I was of the opinion, okay, why? That was my first question. What does the HPA not have together with, let's say, CADA as a flexible metric system, that we, if we pull those two together, to be able to do that use case, right? Even the PBS thing that Sagar is identifying, I think you can even do with that. So in other words, what I'm suggesting is, you do a POC, you take HPA, you take CADA metric controller, you take, let's say, OAI as a deployment, right? And you basically put that together, and you're trying to do a POC to identify a scale out of the OAI, or you can also pick free 5GC. I don't mind either way you go. And you basically say, okay, these are the components that I've used, and this is what I can achieve. And these are the things that we need to do in order to, so this is a gap, this is this, and this is that. And as a result, you get to the next stage. You see what I'm saying? And so then we have to see, okay, how do we hook up that to the next stage? So my suggestion would be, start there. I don't know what other people think, but that would be, because then you're also close to observability, in my view, because if you look to the observability, I don't know, Steven, is Steven on the call? And I saw Piotr, they're also focusing, my understanding, Steven, I mean, there hasn't been very much meetings lately, but you're also focusing more on the workload cluster and to get additional metrics out of the thing, right? And to expose it in a generic way. Is that fair? Is Steven there? Yeah. Bala also raised his hand.
Yeah, I think I agree with Wim. I think we need to make the system more observable before we talk about SA. And then I will just add one point to what Wim was saying. In addition to make workload clusters also observable, we also need to make management cluster more observable as well. The reason I'm saying is, for example, in today's TSC meeting, Sagar did a very good demo of R2. What is, and in terms of when he demoed that, he showed us the different tests that we run and how much time each test will consume. For example, deployment of RAN components or core components through entire end-to-end chain, it takes like maybe 20 minutes or something. So what is happening in the system where it is stuck? So basically, some people may think system is not progressing at all. So things like that. So if we can make our both management cluster and workload cluster observable, that means we define metrics, including the end-to-end system, for example, including our specializers, including our controllers, maybe in port system as well, and also our controllers in the workload cluster. And if we have the communication means established, like Wim suggested, between workload cluster and the management cluster, just make those metrics available. Let the people know what's going on. I think that will be a good step.
Bala, actually, but my point is something like this. For the service assurance related work, we need not to wait for observability to fully grown. Let's say there are some metrics are already available, right? Like CPU utilization or infra related any KPI parameters. So we can directly consume it. Even the NFs, they like OAI, they provide some kind of KPI parameters. We can utilize it. So
True.
observability will solve the problem. Yeah.
Yeah, true, Subhash. You're right. But what I was saying is, I was kind of, in my view, I'm looking at observability and service assurance under the same umbrella. So it is
Of
not
course,
just, say, I'm not looking at them separately. So basically, I'm thinking this team, we will be, I mean, in fact, you are leading this with Stephen and others, will be doing the observability and service assurance together as a single single story. I mean, when I say story, don't take it in the story that we do, not the user story. I'm talking about the story.
Yep.
So if from that context perspective, I think the base thing that is missing today is people or the users, they may not know what's going on in the system. So from this group, probably that may be the very first story that we do, let the people know what's going on in the system. I know I absolutely agree with you that we can do some things with SA today. And I also agree with you that SA is a very important use case. I agree to both the points. But I think if we can make this our platform more observable, both from the workload cluster and the management cluster perspective, that will be a good first step, because that will give insight into the system, what's going on. Actually, that may be even helpful to developers. We may be able to figure out few things where the things are, and we may end up fixing our system.
Yep, Bala, but what I'm trying to tell, observability will mature in parallel. And once they are able to observe the entire system, anyway, service assurance will consume it. But yeah, certain things are still there that service assurance can use and move forward. So that will also take some time to get mature, right? So once both are get matured, at that time, I think it's like slowly it's like the interface will start building up. So that is my point.
It's a different direction somehow a little bit, but to a certain point, Bala is right. Is that okay? See, here we are focused on network functions, right, and network function assurance, right, and observability, right. That has been the main conversation so far that we are having, I think, in this working group as well as in the observability. What Bala is saying is that we have today a more, let's say, another problem. I'm not saying more important because that would be unfair. But what you see is that we have a missing, the whole observability, and including service assurance, by the way, because they go pretty much the same, hand in hand, is we also could use what we have today and try to enhance the system and give us better information of what's going on, rather than right now someone pushes a button and hope the thing succeeds. Right?
Absolutely, Wim. I totally agree. That I think from ours, the way I am looking at it is, let's give the users insight into our systems. Let's give the users insight into our platform. Because that is the step one. If we do that, I mean, we can just expose those through Prometheus, and Prometheus collector could collect it and show it, and also that will be useful for us developers. So I understand what Subhash is also saying. Subhash is I think try to convey both of them. Both the streams are going to go in parallel. But if there are two teams that are doing this, okay, that's an okay thing to do. But I was under the impression that this single team will be responsible for both observability and service assurance.
I don't know. SA is a very specific actions taken after the fact. So observability, we may have other requirements coming from somewhere else that we have to act upon and then prioritize by SIG 1. But I had a very brief conversation with Subhash last night too, on Slack, on whether or not we merge the two together. And SA is a lot more than observability, and then B, observability should address more than just SA. So that's why we don't want to muddle the water too much between the two. SA should be pushing requirements into observability, but then observability doesn't just serve SA, and SA is more than observability. So
true. I understand, but if we are, if that's where if we have a separate team looking to observability, that's absolutely fine. If this is the team that's also looking into observability, then we need to prioritize that. That's all I'm trying to say, because I think the time has come, or 3 or 4 time frame, people will start asking questions. What is going on in the systems? I don't know what's going on. I click this button, I did this step, it's going to take 20 minutes. I had no insights. So I think time has come for us to make the system and platform more observable at this moment of time. If that's a separate team, Stephen, I totally agree with you. But if this is a single team that is doing both the things, let's please make that as a priority. That's all I'm saying.
Actually, Bala, we are trying to create some requirement so that observability could work on it. So that also you can visualize.
That's where I'm getting
Hmm.
confused. I thought we
Yeah.
merged both observability and SA, isn't it? Did we not?
No.
No, we
Um,
at least communicate in the same. Now we have people from the two teams in the same meeting. That's what we have
Yeah,
accomplished. But they are still working independent.
Yeah. So this meeting used to be at 8 a.m. Pacific, which I wouldn't have able to come. So I appreciate that Sebastian changed it so that I could come. Alexis, I specifically asked for that. So they said the observability is such a big part of SA, then observability team members, not just me, should be joining the SA meeting. But the observability task force, I mean, I don't know when we have launched it per se, but it's basically a SIG2 task force that we're looking at frameworks on addressing use cases. As Wim said, I actually have an NF topology use case for observability too. And then if we are going to do day 2 and operators, then obviously that is another use case that requires for observability is to expose things to the NF operators running on workload. So all these are things that are on the pipeline. It sounded like that SA has the most requirements and most explicit requirements, and we love to actually hear that observability side. And if the community SIG1 pencil that in as a thing that we have to do for L3, then obviously we prioritize. But as Bala said, perhaps much more importantly is just visibility in general, that we should have that pencil in as high priority for L3, which I do agree to, obviously. So
Yeah, thanks for the clarification. That makes me that makes it a little bit clear what Subhashi was saying. Yeah, I think Stephen, I think I think we need to have that discussion about how to make how to provide better insights into the platform. Yeah,
go ahead, Tal. Sorry.
Tal.
Yeah, so we just have so many things. We have 100 different things that are high priority for R3. So I'm going to continue to resist mentioning of what specifically is going to fit. Something is going to fit. It might be POC or experimental. We'll figure that out later. But I just want to make a general comment. I think the meeting today has been kind of weirdly contentious. It shouldn't be. I think there's no immediate requirement for this to be finalized in a certain deadline, right? Let's continue working on this together. We don't have to start to get worried about what's going to get in or not at this point, right? Let's flesh this out in parallel with observability. Obviously, there will be feedback back and forth. There are a few use cases for observability. This is one of them, right? Let's just continue to iterate. I think eventually we'll reach alignment. I don't think we need to be so worried at this point. That's my general.
Yeah, Tal, I totally agree. I mean, somewhere we should make progress. Otherwise, we'll just keep on discussing different aspects. So we should try to attempt.
Also, I think we are squarely in the L3 development cycle, so we have to sort out what we want to do on L3.
Yeah.
But my suggestion to do a POC, right, on this use case, does that make sense to everyone? Is that because at least we can move forward?
Yes, absolutely. I think we can do a POC, which is in Nephio experimental, which is not part of the code yet. We've done this with a few things, with Helm, with other stuff. I think having some code running, and even if it's really basic and unrelated to the rest of Nephio, I think that can give us some more insights about what is possible, what's not possible. Yeah, I'm a believer in POCs.
But yeah, Tal and Wim, I would like to also mention that if it is a part of R3, then it will give motivation for other folks also. Otherwise, what will happen? It will go in as just experimental, keep sitting there. And if it is a part of R3, people will start taking it seriously. So
sure. We want to do something for R3. Obviously, we all want that to happen. We just don't know what the scope of that will be. It's obviously not going to be all of this. It's going to be something. So what that something is, exactly, let's worry about that later. That's my opinion.
That's why my suggestion would be, Sebastian, let's start with the POC, right? I mean, as a result, you already can identify stuff, right? You work on it with a bunch of people, and then you can move things forward, right? Right?
Yeah.
It will also identify what you need. Do you need an actor pod? Do you not need an actor pod? Why do you need it, right? It will give us all of that information. And as such, you make progress, right?
Yeah, but at least it should be part of R3. I mean to say that this user history like something we are attempting. That should be, it should go there actually. Like
Yeah, but so
at least,
but yeah,
Nobody is
yeah,
saying.
nobody's saying yes or no is what I'm saying. Nobody's saying yes or no. Because look at the SDK, right? We thought we were going to do the SDK in R3, right? In R2, sorry. We didn't end up doing it in R2, right? But we made a lot of progress, right? Whereas right now we are trying to get something into R3, okay? But so by you, and that was purely an experimental project at the end of the day, but it could have made it into R3, R2, by the way, if we fully would have baked it, right? But
okay.
So that's what we are trying to say is that we give you a path to continue rather than otherwise we continue to discuss and discuss and discuss and we don't do anything. So what we are saying is let's move forward. Let's try to do a POC on your use case number 1, right? And then we take it from there, right? And okay, the sooner you get the POC together, identify a number of people who are helping you, right? Because it's always good to build a team, I think, around this topic, that we have more people together doing this. And as a result, we build up some people and a community around this use case, and we move forward, right? That's basically what I'm proposing.
Yeah. So once we are able to identify it, that time we'll put in the Nepio code. That should be okay, right?
Yeah, I mean, you first. So what we are suggesting is start with a POC, right? Start with a proof of concept. You show it, and then we can always. I mean, see, if you do a POC next week, you can start saying, okay, I need this and that and that, and it would be easy to move forward, right? So just it's a process. So let's go with the flow, is what we are saying, and we don't want to stop you. Just let's go with the flow.
Okay, sure. I think that would be better. Means like at least make us some progress, and we'll keep discussing on these ideas. Yeah,
correct.
Okay. Yeah, we just on the top of hour. So, sorry, we missed some last item, observability related discussion. I think so that will cover in the next meeting. Okay, and yeah, and also there was some comment actually from Peter, right? So today I wanted to give him a few minutes, but I think we are over the time. So maybe in the next meeting we'll cover it. Peter, do you want to say anything just before we close the meeting?
Yeah, I mean, I had some comments, but I agree with Wim that we should start with some kind of proof of concept, and let's see if the actual report is really necessary, because that was my main concern. And we can discuss offline on the next meeting. We will see. Do not make this meeting any longer.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, everyone, and have a good day. And we'll give updates next week. Thank you. Bye bye.
Thanks, Subhash.
Thank you, Subhash.
Thanks, Subhash. Yeah.
Bye.